They say the terrifying black Vulga appeared in many cities, its purpose shrouded in mystery. No one could explain why it showed up. The car's windows were pitch black, impenetrable, leaving the occupants a mystery. Whenever the black Vulga appeared, parents would rush to hide their children. Its arrival marked a chilling pattern. Children began to vanish. The black Vulga was notorious, a symbol of fear. Its serial number was SSD, rumored to stand for Death to Soviet Children. They say this story dates back to Stalin's time in the village of Novopanskoye, now part of the Mikhailovsky district in the Ryazan region. A woman in the village gave birth to a son, but from the beginning, the child unsettled the villagers. His head was oddly large and elongated, and when he cried, the sound resembled the honking of a horse more than a baby's wail. As he grew, his features only became stranger. His head stretched further, his nose elongated, and his nostrils flared wide. His face and body grew covered in fur. His large eyes angled outward, and a mane sprouted down the back of his head. By adolescence, he was a startling likeness of a horse's head. He never learned to speak clearly, giggling incoherently instead, and he seemed to have a mental delay. Yet, despite his differences, he was an affectionate son. His mother adored him, and though he lacked words, they understood each other. He grew strong and hard-working, helping his mother tirelessly in the garden and around the house. Life continued this way until strangers began to take notice. Black government cars began appearing in the village, circling the house as if searching for something. The men inside, dressed in black, seemed to be probing for information. The mother, sensing danger, began to hide her son, especially when she needed to leave the village for work. One day, the men came to her house directly. They tried to convince her to hand over her son, claiming they would take him to a special boarding school for children with abnormalities. They promised he would be with others like him, where he would be understood and accepted. But the mother's instincts told her otherwise, and she refused outright. When persuasion failed, the men tried to take him by force. The mother, armed with a rolling pin, fought with such fury that even several strong men could not subdue her. Her son, unnaturally strong, fought back too, kicking and struggling against the grasp. The commotion drew the attention of the neighbors, who came running to help. Faced with a crowd, the men retreated, quickly driving off in their black car. After that day, the mother was vigilant. She kept her son close at all times, even bringing him along when she worked. For a while, the black car stopped appearing in the village. One morning, she was called urgently to work in a distant field, far from the estate. She hesitated, her heart heavy with worry, but refusing was not an option in those times. When she returned late that evening, her son was gone. Frantic, she searched the village, asking everyone she could find. Her worst fears were confirmed. The black Vulga had returned. While she was away, the men had taken her son. She searched for him tirelessly, writing letters and pleading for answers, but her efforts were in vain. He was never seen again. Some say he was taken to a prison and never released. The peasant who told me the story was not very educated, but he had heard of the Kunstkamera. He may have meant that the boy was taken to a secret military research institute, but he called it the Kunstkamera, and I've kept the name as he told it to me. Surprisingly, there is a similar legend in American folklore, the story of the Jersey Devil. This cryptozoological creature, described as about 1.5 meters in height, with a horse's head and wings, is said to shriek terribly, fly, and sometimes attack people. Over 5,000 sightings have been documented, making it one of the most frequently reported cryptids in history, more than even the Loch Ness Monster. One legend about the Jersey Devil's origin parallels the story of the Ryazan horse-headed boy. During the American War of Independence, a New Jersey girl fell in love with a British soldier. Despite public scorn, she continued to meet him in secret and soon became pregnant. In the eyes of her community, her love was a betrayal of the fledgling American nation. The British were enemies, and her child was cursed by association. The baby was born with an oddly shaped head, which became more horse-like as he grew. He never learned to speak clearly, and eventually, the story says, wings sprouted from his back. The boy grew aggressive, fled into the forest, and began terrorizing New Jersey, attacking people, and, according to legend, still does. Stories about the Black Vulga are often linked to horrific events in the cornfields. During the stagnation period, Black Vulgas of unknown origin were reported in villages across the Ryazan and Tula regions. Their appearance coincided with a chilling pattern. Parents would keep children, particularly boys aged 12 to 16, at home, warning them to stay away from the cornfields. People whispered about terrible murders in the cornfields. Teenagers found mutilated, their livers and kidneys cut out while they were still alive. In one such tale from the early 1980s, several gruesome deaths were reported near the village of Furilovka in the Mikhailovsky district. Villagers noticed a Black Vulga patrolling the area before the killings were discovered. As children, we were not told much. Eavesdropping on adult conversations, I learned that there were two theories. Either a deranged maniac was responsible, or the organs were being harvested for illegal transplants. No one spoke openly about these theories, but the fear of the Black Vulga remained strong. Another strange story about the Black Vulga comes from the late 1970s in 1978, involving an excavator operator named Zotov. He worked on the Machino State Farm in the Mikhailovsky district and was a skilled worker, known for his ability to dig up or bury just about anything. Zotov was also a family man with 8 children at the time, and eventually even more. Like many, Zotov enjoyed drinking, though he wasn't seen as unusual for it. He spent most of his time working, caring for his family, or fishing. Machino had 2 main ponds, Mashinsky Pond and MTS Pond, along with several smaller ones, all teeming with large crucian carp in the early 1970s. However, by the late 1970s, the fish had grown smaller and weaker, which frustrated the locals. What ties Zotov to the legend is his romantic streak, which surfaced in an unexpected way. One day, while excavating near one of the ponds, he accidentally unearthed a buried cable, something highly sensitive, though he had no idea at the time. Shortly after, Black Vulgas began appearing around the farm. The connection between Zotov's excavation and the sudden presence of the Black Vulgas is unclear. Some say he unintentionally cut an important underground military or communication line, triggering a response from the authorities. Others think the cable was part of something far more secretive. Whatever the case, the story marks one more eerie instance of the Black Vulga's swift and unexplained appearance. Despite its mysterious nature, this tale, like many involving the Black Vulga, continues to live on in whispers and folklore. One sunny day in the summer of 1978, Zotov was tasked with digging a trench on the Machino State Farm. He completed the job quickly and found himself with plenty of free time. Having brought along some vodka, Zotov sat in the cab of his excavator, sipping away. As the alcohol took hold, he began to dream of creating a personal pond. Wouldn't it be wonderful, he thought, to dig a pond filled with large crucian carp? It could be a place for his family and village friends to fish together. A romantic idea for a man like Zotov, driven more by action than contemplation. Inspired, Zotov picked a spot he found appealing and began to dig. However, as his excavator's bucket plunged into the earth, it hit something unusual. Sparks erupted, filling the air with crackling light. The excavator's cab lit up like a fireworks show, and Zotov was startled out of his romantic vision. Convinced that lightning had struck his machine, Zotov fled the scene. To calm his nerves, he found more vodka and drank himself into a stupor before stumbling home to sleep, offering no explanation to anyone about what had happened. Meanwhile, other workers at the state farm noticed the strange glow and rushed to investigate. They quickly alerted the director and the party organizer. The situation was dire. Zotov's excavator had severed an important communication cable meant for high-ranking officials. Barely 2.5 hours after the incident, a fleet of Black Vulgas roared into the village, carrying men in civilian clothes who exuded authority. They swiftly assembled the farm's senior staff, including the director, the party organizer, and the chief ergonomist. The secret agents were furious. They demanded immediate accountability, threatening severe consequences. The State Farm's leaders, however, sprang to Zotov's defense. Zotov is a top-notch specialist, a family man with 8 children to feed, they argued. Yes, he made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes. If you punish him, who will operate the excavator? And how will his wife and children survive without their breadwinner? The villagers too rallied behind Zotov, praising his work ethic and character. Confronted with this display of solidarity, the agents relented. They repaired the cable, issued stern warnings, and left for Moscow. When Zotov finally woke up, he had no idea what had transpired. Stepping outside, he was mobbed by villagers, eager to recount the near apocalypse he had caused. They told him how he had almost been dragged off by Kremlin agents in their black Vulgas, how the village stood up for him, and how he had narrowly escaped prison. Zotov listened in disbelief. He slept through the entire ordeal. The villagers remained puzzled by one thing: the sheer speed of the agent's response. From the moment the cable was severed, they had located the break, held a meeting, and arrived in Machina, all in just 2.5 hours. How had they managed it? The mystery of the Black Vulgas only deepened. They tell a story about a tractor driver from Sabatina, a village in the Zakharovsky district of the Ryazan region, who was once sent on a mission to a distant field. The tractor driver was working in a remote area, far from civilization. It was quiet and lonely, just a monotonous day. Suddenly, he saw a well-dressed man walking toward him across the field. The man was wearing a good suit and shoes, strangely out of place in the middle of nowhere. The driver, a little taken aback, slowed his engine. The man approached and said, "Listen, friend, not as a favor, but as a fellow man, help us out. People should help each other. Here's the thing. My friends and I are stuck with our car on your road. Can you pull us out? Don't worry, we will repay you, and it won't be a problem." The tractor driver, feeling respected and eager to help, agreed without hesitation. They drove for a few kilometers before reaching a country road. There, the tractor driver saw a black Volga stuck in the ruts, surrounded by well-dressed people, suits and expensive shoes, trudging through the muddy road. It was a mystery how such well-dressed people ended up in the backwoods of Ryazan. They all treated the tractor driver with great respect, asking him to pull the car free. The group had a rope, and soon enough, the tractor driver managed to free the Volga from the mud. Afterward, the group thanked him and handed him some money. They shook his hand and drove off, leaving the tractor driver watching the car disappear into the distance. He had never seen such a fine vehicle before. As he stood there, mesmerized by the Volga, he looked down at the money they had given him. He expected maybe a ruble or two, but when he looked, he could not believe his eyes. 300 rubles. Back in those times, 300 rubles, that was 3 months' salary. The tractor driver froze, unsure what to do. At first, he wanted to throw the money away, but then he decided to consult with his wife. He climbed back on the tractor and made his way home. When he arrived, his wife greeted him, sat him down, and began preparing dinner. As he was about to mention the 300 rubles, the radio in the background suddenly announced some shocking news. A major crime has been committed in Ryazan. A group of unknown individuals in a black Volga have robbed a bank, making off with a huge sum of money. All major roads have been blocked, but the criminals have yet to be captured. Authorities believe they may have escaped along the country roads. Citizens are urged to report any sightings of suspicious black Volgas. At that moment, the tractor driver realized who he had helped. They were criminals. They had robbed the bank. What should he do with the money? He could not throw it away, but what if the numbers were recorded? Should he go to the police and report everything, or were the bandits watching, waiting to take revenge? In the end, the tractor driver decided to bury the money in his backyard, just to be safe. He never dug it up again. They say this story took place in the early 1980s, likely in the Moscow region or somewhere in central Russia. A traffic cop was stationed at a post, monitoring the speed of passing cars. Back then, away from the big cities, there were far fewer cars on the roads, so the officer found himself incredibly bored. The occasional car would pass, but none were breaking any traffic laws. There was no one to stop or fine. Then, suddenly, a large group of cars came speeding toward him at an astonishing pace, completely unheard of for Soviet times. The officer quickly grabbed his speed measuring device and started to check. 120 kilometers per hour, he fought in disbelief. It was incredible. He had never witnessed such a speed before. But just as he was processing the numbers, something hit him in the forehead with incredible force. His head exploded. A bullet, fired from about a kilometer away, had struck him directly in the forehead. The shooter, a professional, had made the shot in one try, from an extraordinary distance. It was nothing short of unbelievable. The traffic cop died instantly, without any suffering. Here is what happened. The speeding cars were part of the motorcade of the legendary Soviet leader and political figure, Yuri Vladimirovich Andropov. The motorcade was protected by an elite security detail, highly trained professionals who could take out a target from a kilometer away at high speed. Since the officer was standing there with his device, it appeared from the distance as if he was holding a weapon. The security team assumed an assassination attempt on Andropov was underway and shot the officer. When they got closer and realized the man was just a traffic cop, they tossed a special token onto his body. When his colleagues arrived at the scene, they saw the token and reported it to their superiors. The response from the higher-ups was chilling. The murder would not be investigated because cases involving such tokens were never looked into. This one is fucked up. Bime, 17 years old, had recently been shot, for reasons I won't explain. I grew up in South Central. You do the math. Buddy of mine is rushing me to the hospital. I was shot twice in the stomach. In the back seat, with a shirt as a makeshift rag on the wound. I was laying down, looking up out the window. I was starting to feel dizzy because of all of the blood that I was losing. Started seeing stars or whatever, losing consciousness. Still looking out of the window at the roof of the car. I see a wrinkly grey hand kind of flop on the window from the top of the roof. Totally dying, .gif. My vision was fading, and it started to black out from the corner of my eyes. Now 2 hands on the window. Trying to scream to friend. Blood in mouth. Loud ringing in my ears sounds like broken pipes or a train whistle. Start to slowly see the head of one of the most mangled, terrifying faces lower into the window. Blacked out. That was the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital. I don't even fucking know. Every time I get seriously hurt, I heard that same whistle in my head, and everything turns surreal. Any anons in this thread have stories about chairs in the woods. Not stairs, but chairs. They are somewhat common around where I live. I've never seen a staircase randomly in the wilderness, but I've seen a lot of things, like pick related. The one unifying factors with every time I've seen a chair were 1. The sounds of the woods, the winds, etc. would completely go out when near it. 2. The chairs were never damaged or clearly abandoned. They always looked brand new. And 3. The chairs were always brightly colored and in contrast to the woods around them. For example, in the fall, the chairs would be green. In the summer, the chairs would be orange. In winter, the chairs would be black. Is some schizo in my area fucking with me, or is this some actual paranormal happening? The only story I really have of interacting with one of these chairs was throwing a rock at one when I was about 13 years old. A few hours afterwards, when I was at home, a rock was thrown back through my window. It spooked the shit out of me, and I was really close to the window at my desk, but I did not see anyone or anything throw the rock. Yeah, but I think they're just mainly used by kids hanging around or homeless people. I even have 2 stories involving them, albeit one was a chair we brought ourselves, so it doesn't really count. The other one was a bit weirder though, although not strictly in the woods. Have a housing estate built in the 1960s that's in the oddest place. Has no shops or local amenities because it's built in the middle of a trading estate. Sometime in the 1990s, they discover something in the soil has cancer-causing properties, and the big factories nearby do not help, so they decide to demolish it around 1999. Now, It's just this big bit of land that still has all of the roads and footpaths, the streetlights, which are never turned on, and even some of the old fences from people's properties still erected. Other than that though, it's just grass full of rubble. Walk dog there, because it's out of the way, and you can do a lap around the old streets. This particular road loops around a big patch of grass full of trees. Don't know if they were back gardens, or if it was always grass and trees. There definitely was not houses where the trees are, because the trees could not grow that fast. They're like this big, 50-inch things. Pass by with dog who stops and starts sniffing the edge, then growling. Normally really placid. Could be rats. Take a look. About a foot in from the edge, there is a broken paving stone. In fact, there is a bunch of them that someone has put together to make a little path. Walk down it. Leads to a tree surrounded by bushes, but the bushes have an opening in them, like a fox den, but big enough for a person to get inside. One single couch chair against the tree trunk. Sit in it. Can see the entire road and everything through these little openings that have been made in the bushes. Come back out. You would never know it was there from the road. I think it was some homeless person using it like a lookout. It was still really weird though. Huh. I have something that might be related to this. There is a local legend around where I live. You're supposed to go out to this one cemetery at night, sit in one of the benches. If you wait long enough, you will see the devil or something. Friend and I do this years back. We did not believe it, of course, but it was Halloween, and we had nothing else going on. As we're waiting in the dark, we hear someone walking through the trees towards us. Oh no, it's the devil. Seriously though, it was kind of scary. Turned out to be a hobo. Guy looked severely unkempt and legit crazy. Had the wild eyes, reeked of booze, his teeth were all rotted out, and he was talking to us way too fucking loudly. Started to think the cops might show up, so I tell my friend, come on, let's go. Hobo asks if we were here to see the devil. He tells us there is a haunted chair in the woods that really works. It's in a little forest nearby that we have to pass to get home, so we thank the guy and take off because we are eager to leave the crazy fucker, but we stop by the little forest like idiots. Could have easily been some hobo trap or something, but oh well, in we go. The hobo had told us there were marks on the trees leading the way, and sure enough there were. They were in some sort of hobo code or something, little squares and circles and stuff. Anyway, to make a long story short, we find two bodies. Two guys about our age, one heaped over the other, face down in the leaves. Nearby was a chair that looked totally out of place. Looked new and had gold trim, bright green. Realized the whole place is suddenly fucking quiet. Not even a breeze, despite it being Halloween. For some reason, we both back away slowly instead of hightailing it out of there until we can't see the chair anymore. Then race to the car and head home. Went back later. No chair, no bodies, and the markings on the trees had been scratched out with a knife or something. Fucking spooky. I do think on some level that the hobos know more about the chairs in the woods than any other group. I've talked with a few local hunters, and they've mentioned seeing the chairs, but none of them have any major stories about them. There is an exception. With a hunter, I will just refer to as James. I will greentext his story. Be James, hunting some deer, laying in the bush, tracking this one particularly large buck. Has a clear shot on the thing. Shoots it in the neck. Should have killed it instantly. Starts bounding away while letting out these god-awful screams of pain. Follow the blood trail and screaming. Don't want to lose it and its venison. Hear the screaming in the distance stop, like someone just paused the audio. Find the deer neatly sat down in front of a bright red chair. Deer is rotten down to the bone by the time James gets home with it, despite it being a fresh kill. Be me, freshman in high school. Some of the kids broke in over the weekend and trashed the place. Flipped desks, clogged the shitters, emptied the fire extinguishers through the hallways. Never caught them, lol, but they cancel school for a week to clean it up. I'm out for most of the week, dicking around with friends mostly. Spend the time from dusk to dark in the park, which was some rusty old jungle gym and benches that kids are too afraid to use. We're sharing some Mike's lemonade, cause fuck yeah, it's the best we got, when some guy near us asks if he can have some too. Look normal, not homeless, not rich, just a blue-collar looking dude. We tell him no, guy tries bargaining, then frets. Well, we are 14, we are the toughest kids we know. He walks off. We keep drinking and smoking until it gets dark. Most of them go home. It's me and 2 other guys for a while. They get up to leave. I say I'll leave in another few minutes, cause I'm still a little high and don't feel like going home on such a crisp fall night. Pick related. Peaceful as fuck. You sure, Anon? You can get home alright? Okay man, see ya. I'm sitting on the bench, enjoying the fresh, cool night air, when I see a figure standing under a searchlight, staring at me. Stare at this for a few minutes, start to get creeped out, and then figure I should leave. As I get up, the figure starts walking towards the park. Fuck. That's the main path, in and out. He will see me for sure. Park is set up like this. Cluster of benches and playgrounds in the center. To the left is forest, that if you go through, lands you back to some neighborhoods. To the right is one paved path that goes onto a set of stairs to a main residential road with a few trees placed here and there around it. That paved path is the one he is walking down towards me. Can't go that way without him seeing me, and this guy's most certainly heading in my direction. Have to head into the woods. Fuck it, I'll just run through them and end up on a street. Start walking. Not too fast, because I don't want it to be obvious. Get into the woods, jog up ahead, and crouch and wait for a second. Hear somebody coming through the woods too. Welp. Pick up a thick branch and start jogging. Made too much noise and hear somebody running after me. Turn back out of instinct because of the noise. It's the blue-collar man charging after me. Sprint as fast as I can, but it's really dark, and if I trip, I am fucked. Round a cluster of bushes and trees and wait, thinking I can slug him in the legs when he rounds the corner. Sit and wait. Charging sounds stop. I jump out with a branch raised like a sword and looking like a jackass. He is a few feet away, just staring at me. I throw it at him and run away. Break the trees to the street. Turn around and don't see him, so I keep running home. Tell my friends the next day. They're like, oh, that creepy dude. Yeah, he was waiting for us in the street or something. He was staring at us when we left. Not really scary, but a true story. Dad gets sick of city life and moves to outback Queensland, small town, about 2 hours drive from Charleville. Not many people in town, maybe 20. Surrounded by stations, cattle farms that are vast. I'm talking 100s of square kilometers. Dad bored, so asks station owners if he can drive around and explore. They are hesitant, but eventually say okay. One day, he is driving around and finds a huge gorge with a big waterhole. Weird mounds all around the place. Look like pillboxes, but solid. Takes pictures and gets going, because it is getting dark. Driving back along track, sun almost set. He looks and sees weird lights behind him. Look like car lights, but they are too high and are bobbing. They are coming up, quickly behind them. Quickly turn off track and shoot into bush. Dad has no idea what it was. Gets back home safe. Next morning, goes to the general store, asks about the waterhole, but does not mention lights. That is Murder Hole Gorge. Back when the town was founded, the local Aboriginal tribe kept raiding and attacking the settlers, so one day, they set a trap at the waterhole. They hid around the mounds that were there, and when the trap came back, they shot all of them, about 50 or so. They threw all of the bodies into the gorge. Probably found the bones, if anyone bothered to dive for them. Thought they were going there just for water, but turns out it was a sacred site or something. Dad says that's interesting. The station owners have been there for generations. Do they know about this? Don't mention it to them. They want those stories forgotten. Dad mentions the lights he saw driving back. Store guy says lights pop up on the outskirts of town every so often. Station owners see them around too. They don't harm people, but no one knows what the fuck they are. I've been out a number of times, but never seen the lights. There are dinosaur fossils and footprints in rocks out there too. Pretty interesting place.